Arab executive hires African nanny over the phone, breaks down when she dances with his paralyzed daughter. When billionaire real estate tycoon Omar al-Masri placed a desperate call for help to care for his disabled daughter, he never expected the woman on the other end of the line, a soft-voiced African nanny named Mariam, to become the light his mansion had long been missing. But what truly shattered him was the moment he walked in and saw what no doctor had managed to do. His little girl smiling, standing, and dancing. What Mariam did in that moment will leave you speechless. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring stories like this to you. The Al-Masri estate sat like a white crown on the outskirts of Abu Dhabi, a massive glass and stone structure built with the finest materials money could buy. Yet behind the towering pillars and gold-trimmed archways, one room remained untouched by warmth. It belonged to Yasmin, Omar's 8-year-old daughter, paralyzed from the waist down after a devastating car accident 2 years prior. Omar al-Masri had built empires: oil, real estate, aviation. His name opened doors in every corner of the globe. But when it came to his daughter, the doors remained closed. Dozens of specialists had come and gone. Therapists from Europe, neurologists from America, spiritual healers from India. All had left the same way, defeated. Yasmin barely spoke. She hadn't smiled in a year. Her legs were still. Her eyes were even stiller. Omar sat at the edge of his daughter's bed that morning, staring at the IV drip beside her and the tray of untouched food on the nightstand. The nurse had just resigned. Another one. She said Yasmin wouldn't let her touch her, that the child stared through her as if she didn't exist. He leaned forward and whispered, "I would give it all away, Habibti, if I could just see you dance again." But there was no response. That night, as he scrolled through agency listings from his phone, a number caught his eye. It was a private contact recommended by one of the palace staff, an African woman named Mariam. "She doesn't have credentials, sir," the staff member warned. "But she has something different." Omar almost skipped it, but his thumb hovered. Something about the name stirred something deep inside him. He pressed call. A soft, melodic voice answered. "Peace be upon you, sir. You must be the father." He blinked. "Yes. How did you—" "I felt your daughter's sorrow the moment I saw the number. You don't need to explain. Just tell me when to come." Omar hesitated. "You're in Nairobi, yes? That's thousands of miles." "I'll be on the next flight," she said calmly. "Please have a chair by her window, one that sees the sunrise." Before he could reply, the line went dead. Omar stared at his phone for a moment, confused, then set it down. Part of him was annoyed. Who did this woman think she was, ordering things into his home? But another part, the part that hadn't felt anything in months, was intrigued. The next afternoon, The private jet landed. Omar didn't go to greet her. He had staff do it. From the security cameras, he watched her walk up the front steps. A tall woman in a faded blue dress, a matching head wrap, and barefoot. Barefoot? She was offered shoes. She declined them. Mariam entered Yasmin's room without knocking. Omar tensed behind the surveillance screen. What was she doing? She stepped quietly toward the child. Yasmin was facing the wall, unmoving. Mariam didn't say a word. She sat in the chair by the window, the one facing the sunrise. Then, after a long silence, she began to hum. A melody unlike anything Omar had heard before, ancient, sorrowful, and full of something he couldn't quite name. Not joy, not pain. Both. Yasmin didn't move, but her eyes blinked. Mariam's humming became a low song, a language Omar didn't recognize. It wasn't Arabic, French, or English, but it felt like home. And for the first time in months, the little girl turned her head, slightly, just enough to look at the woman by the window. Omar dropped the coffee cup in his hand. It shattered on the floor. He hadn't seen Yasmin look at anyone that way in almost 2 years. He whispered under his breath, "What are you?" But deep down, he already knew. She wasn't a nurse. She was a storm dressed in silence. And something had just changed. The next morning, Omar woke up earlier than usual. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the memory of the look Yasmin had given that woman. Maybe it was the way Mariam's voice had lingered in the halls long after her song ended. But something gnawed at him. Not fear, not anger, something unfamiliar. Hope, perhaps, or guilt. He walked past the breakfast staff without a word and headed straight to Yasmin's wing. The door was cracked open. Inside, the curtains were drawn back, letting in the full force of the Abu Dhabi morning sun. Yasmin sat by the window, still in her wheelchair, her back slightly straighter than usual. Mariam stood beside her, humming softly, brushing the girl's hair with a carved wooden comb Omar had never seen before. "Good morning, sir," Mariam said without turning around. Yasmin blinked at her father, her eyes not as blank as they used to be. He stepped into the room, hesitating for a second. "I wasn't expecting you to still be here." Mariam smiled. "I wasn't expecting to leave." Omar furrowed his brows. "I hired you as a nanny, not a guest." "You hired me to help her," she replied, finally turning to face him. "That's what I'm doing." He said nothing, just nodded, and walked out. But he didn't go far. From the hallway, he listened. Mariam began to tell a story in her native Swahili, a tale about a young lioness who could not walk, but still managed to become queen of the savannah. The cadence of her words, the softness of her voice, created a world that lifted the silence from the room. And then came the humming again. This time, slower, more deliberate. Yasmin responded by tapping her fingers against the armrest. That night, Omar couldn't sleep. He opened his laptop and scrolled through Mariam's records, or lack thereof. No certifications, no formal employment history, just scattered mentions from expat forums and whispered references from high society wives who only shared her name in private messages as if she was some kind of secret. One post stood out. "She's not a nanny, she's a healer, but only for the broken-hearted, and only if they let her." The next day, Omar found Mariam in the courtyard. She was walking barefoot on the white marble, her head tilted toward the sky. "I want to know what you're doing with my daughter," he said, approaching her directly. She turned and looked at him, not with fear, not even with respect, but with a deep, quiet certainty. "I'm teaching her how to listen to her body again, to remember what joy felt like before the trauma." Omar crossed his arms. "No amount of singing will fix her spinal cord." Mariam smiled faintly. "You think healing only happens in hospitals?" He felt himself bristle. "And what exactly qualifies you? You have no degree, no license." "I don't heal the body," she said gently. "I wake up the soul, and when the soul rises, sometimes the body follows." That night, Omar stood outside Yasmin's room again, invisible behind the shadows of the hallway. Inside, the room had transformed. Candles flickered on the nightstands. A small drum sat beside Mariam's feet. She began to tap it slowly, rhythmically. Her voice danced above the beat, calling out ancient lullabies older than the walls that surrounded them. Yasmin, sitting in her wheelchair, lifted her arms in the air, mimicking Mariam's movements. Her fingers moved, then her wrists. And for the first time, she laughed. A short, sudden sound that caught even Mariam off guard. Omar felt his knees go weak. He leaned against the wall and let out a sound he hadn't heard from himself in years. A sob. He had given her the best doctors, the most advanced equipment, but not one of them had given her a reason to smile. This barefoot stranger had done that in less than 2 days. When Mariam came out of the room later, she found Omar still there in the corridor, eyes red. "I don't know who you are," he said, "but you've done more in 48 hours than I've done in 2 years." Mariam simply nodded. "Then let me stay." He looked down. "Stay," he whispered. But something inside him knew. She hadn't come just to help his daughter. She had come to heal him too. 3 weeks passed. The estate had changed. Laughter echoed in the marble halls now. Not loud, but real. Yasmin's laughter, always delicate, always surprised. The kind of laughter that came not from jokes, but from the rediscovery of joy. Mariam's presence was quiet, but magnetic. Staff began adjusting their schedules around her sessions with the child. The head chef asked what foods Yasmin liked again. She'd started eating. The gardener trimmed the hedges outside her window because, for the first time, she wanted to see them. Omar noticed it all. From his office, from the balcony above the atrium, from the edge of her doorway. He had become a silent observer in his own home, watching the impossible unfold. But it was on the 21st morning that something truly unbelievable happened. Yasmin, wearing a yellow cotton dress, sat in her wheelchair on the sunlit terrace, Mariam beside her. Music played softly from a portable speaker. Not classical, not traditional. It was a simple African lullaby, slow and rhythmic, the kind a mother might hum while swaying with her child under the stars. Mariam crouched in front of Yasmin and whispered something only the little girl could hear. Then she stood and began to move, not just sway. She danced, barefoot, arms flowing like silk in water. Mariam danced in circles around the girl, fluid, unafraid, joyful. Her movements told a story of storms, of stillness, of renewal. The kind of story that needs no words. Yasmin watched. Her hands clenched the sides of her wheelchair, and then her right foot moved, just slightly. Then again. Mariam saw it, but she didn't react. She simply continued dancing, slower now, almost inviting. Yasmin placed her trembling hands on the armrests. Her left leg quivered. Then came the impossible. She leaned forward, gritting her teeth, and with a strength no one believed she still had. She pushed herself up, not fully. Her knees buckled, her frame shook, but she stood for half a second, then fell. Mariam caught her mid-fall, lowering her gently to the ground. Yasmin wasn't hurt. She was laughing. Omar had watched the entire scene from the balcony above, and when he saw her rise, even for a heartbeat, something shattered inside him. His chest ached with so many emotions at once, he couldn't speak. He ran down the stairs, not caring about the cameras, the guards, the image of the billionaire he was supposed to maintain. He knelt beside them on the terrace, trembling. Yasmin looked up at him, smiling, out of breath. "Daddy, did you see me?" He swallowed, nodded. Words wouldn't come. Mariam didn't say a word. She stood up and walked a few steps away, giving them space. Omar held his daughter gently, then looked over his shoulder at the woman who had just altered the laws of their reality. Why now? He asked softly. What made her try to stand today? Mariam turned, the wind catching her head wrap. Because today you were finally watching. Omar blinked. She didn't just need healing, Mariam continued. She needed you. And until you were ready to see her, truly see her, she was never going to try. That night, Omar sat beside Yasmin's bed long after she fell asleep. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and whispered, "I'm sorry I left you in the silence." He walked out and found Mariam sitting alone in the courtyard. He joined her. "I never told you how she got like this," he said. "You don't have to." "No, I do." He inhaled deeply. "I was driving. Her mother was gone. I had a meeting. I should have said no, but I brought her in the car, thinking I could do both. It was raining. I took a call. I never saw the truck." Mariam's eyes glistened, but she said nothing. "She woke up in the hospital, and I promised her everything would be okay. But when she stopped walking, I stopped believing it myself." "And she felt that," Mariam said. "Children always feel the truth before they understand it." They sat in silence. Then Omar asked, "Will she walk again?" Mariam didn't answer directly, but she smiled. "I believe she will dance." The video had been leaked. Omar found out during a board meeting in Dubai. His assistant rushed in, pale and breathless, holding a phone. "Sir, I think you need to see this." It was shaky footage, clearly captured through a servant's phone, showing Mariam dancing around Yasmin on the terrace. And then, the moment that shattered all doubt, the child pushing herself up, standing for a heartbeat, and laughing as she collapsed into Mariam's arms. Within an hour, the clip had gone viral. Arab billionaire's paralyzed daughter walks again thanks to mysterious nanny. News outlets pounced on it. Social media exploded. Some called it a miracle. Others accused Omar of staging it for sympathy or PR. Theories spread like wildfire. Omar ended the meeting early, boarded his private jet, and flew home with his heart pounding. By the time he arrived, reporters were already outside the gates of the estate. Cameras, drones, microphones. The house had become a stage, and he hated every second of it. He found Mariam calmly serving tea to the staff in the atrium, barefoot as always, unbothered by the chaos erupting beyond the walls. "You did this?" he asked, voice low, controlled, but burning. She turned to him, gently placing the porcelain teacup down. "No, but I suspected someone might. You brought this circus into my house." "I brought healing," she said firmly. "The circus came chasing the truth." Omar clenched his fists. "You don't get it. There are investors, contracts, politics, and now I have strangers dissecting my child's life on screens like she's a specimen." Mariam's gaze didn't waver. "Then protect her. Not from me, from them." He paused. She was right. But rage clouded his reason. He dismissed her with a wave of his hand and turned to leave. "You're done here, Mariam. You'll be on the next flight out." She didn't protest. She didn't cry. She simply bowed her head once and whispered, "As you wish." but something in her voice cut deeper than any argument could have. That night, the estate felt colder than it had in weeks. Yasmin refused to eat. She refused to hum. She refused to smile. Omar sat at the edge of her bed again. "Why won't you look at me, Habibti?" he asked softly. Her voice was small but sharp. "You sent her away." His breath caught. "I had to," he whispered. "This world is complicated." "She didn't care about the world," Yasmin said. "She cared about me." Omar tried to hold her hand, but she pulled away. Not cruelly, just closed, like before. Later that night, in his study, Omar opened his old files, therapy reports, medical scans, neurology assessments. The ink bled into each other now, meaningless. They had never seen her like Mariam had, never even tried. Then he opened his security footage archive. He watched the terrace again. He watched the joy, the tremble in his daughter's legs, the way Mariam never once looked at the camera, only at the girl, as if no one else existed. And for the first time in years, Omar cried, not for pity, but for clarity. He had fought for his daughter's body to heal. Mariam had fought for her spirit. The next morning, he stood outside the airport runway, wind slapping his face. The jet was already being prepped. She was inside. He climbed the stairs, heart in his throat. When he stepped inside the cabin, he found Mariam seated calmly by the window, hands in her lap, barefoot still. "I'm sorry," he said, voice shaking. "I was protecting an image, not my daughter." She didn't look surprised. "Do you want me to stay for you?" she asked. "No," he said. "I want you to stay for her. And if you'll allow it, for me too." Mariam finally looked at him and nodded. Later that evening, when she walked back into Yasmin's room, the girl lit up like sunrise over the dunes. She opened her arms without a word. Mariam held her close. Outside, the news cameras buzzed. The headlines screamed. But inside the Al-Masri estate, peace returned. And for the first time in a long time, Omar wasn't watching from a distance. He was there. The storm outside the estate had not calmed, but within its high walls, healing was louder than the noise. Days after Mariam's return, Yasmin began showing signs no one had dared to dream of. She no longer used her wheelchair indoors. With support, she'd taken 4 shaky steps from her bed to the terrace. Her balance was fragile, her legs still unreliable, but she moved. And most importantly, she believed she could move. Omar started canceling meetings. Investors grew impatient, but he didn't care. He had been absent for so long, physically present, but emotionally extinct. Now, he walked beside Yasmin as she practiced shifting her weight, cheering her on with every inch of progress. He often found Mariam humming near the sunlit windows, or placing Yasmin's bare feet in warm bowls of herbs, guiding her with ancestral chants. She never pushed. She invited. And somehow, the little girl always accepted. But one evening changed everything. Mariam came into the study holding an old weathered book, bound in fabric, its pages lined with a handwriting Omar didn't recognize. "I need to show you something," she said. He set aside his laptop. "What is it?" She placed the book on the desk, open to a page with a photograph clipped to the edge, black and white, slightly torn, showing a young African woman holding a baby. The child was wrapped in cloth, embroidered with a familiar symbol, a stylized crescent, the same emblem on the Al-Masri family crest. Omar squinted. "That's my grandmother's pendant." "Yes," Mariam said softly, "because this woman was her nanny, from my village. She died before I was born, but her stories remained." He looked up slowly. "Are you saying she came from the same place I did? She worked here, and when she returned to Africa, she brought back your grandmother's stories about a child who couldn't speak until someone sang to him." Omar blinked. His chest tightened. "That child was me." Mariam nodded. "I knew it the moment I heard your voice on the phone. You weren't just calling for help. You were calling back to something you'd forgotten." He stood, stunned. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because you needed to remember who you were before all this." She gestured to the wealth around them. "Before the titles, before the pain, before the silence." He looked at the photo again. A flood of images returned. Buried memories of a warm lap, of hands clapping to an unseen rhythm, of laughter under a cloth-draped table. "She used to sing to me at night," he whispered. "When I had fevers, she made me tea from leaves she carried in a pouch." "She was my aunt," Mariam said. "You knew love once. It saved you. And now you're passing it on." Omar sat back down, overwhelmed. "I spent decades trying to buy solutions," he murmured. "And the answer was in my past all along." Mariam didn't respond. She didn't need to. That night, he walked into Yasmin's room. She was asleep, curled on her side, a handmade doll in her arms, one Mariam had sewn using scraps from her own dress. He knelt beside her, touched her cheek. "You saved me, Habibti, not the other way around." The next day, Omar called a press conference, but not to defend his image. This time, he spoke from the heart. "My daughter's progress is not a miracle. It's the result of love. Pure, unfiltered, ancient love. I was raised by a woman like Mariam. She healed me when I didn't even know I was broken. And now, history has returned to bless my daughter. I don't care about optics. I care about the truth, and the truth is, we owe our strength not to wealth, but to the women who love us when we have nothing to offer." The clip went viral for all the right reasons. Comments poured in. People who had seen Mariam's dance now saw her as something else. Not a miracle worker, but a reminder that some hearts only wake up when others dare to sing to them. Later that week, Yasmin walked 10 steps unassisted. The whole staff applauded. "But Omar," he cried, because those 10 steps didn't just belong to her. They belonged to all of them. It was Mariam's idea. "She needs a dress," she said one afternoon, smiling as Yasmin sat beside her, folding colored paper. Not a hospital gown, not pajamas, a real dress, one made for dancing. That evening, they worked on it together. Mariam sewed by hand, using golden threads gifted by one of the maids. Yasmin picked the color, sky blue, "the same as the scarf you wore the first day," she said. When it was ready, Yasmin beamed. Mariam helped her step into it. Omar stood at the doorway, unable to speak. And then, music. In the center of the marble courtyard, under the warm Abu Dhabi sky, Yasmin stood, slowly, carefully. Mariam extended her hands, and they danced. Not perfectly, not gracefully, but fully. Omar clapped. The staff clapped. But Yasmin only looked up at the stars. "I'm flying," she whispered. And, in a way, she was. Mariam packed her bag quietly. She had done what she came to do. But when she reached the door, Yasmin blocked it. No wheelchair, no help. Standing. "You can't leave," she said. Mariam crouched. "You don't need me anymore." "I still need your songs," Yasmin replied. Omar stepped forward, his voice full. "Stay, as part of the family, if you'll have us." Mariam looked at them, and for the first time, her voice cracked. "I would be honored." Months passed. Yasmin walked further. She danced often. Omar smiled more. But something else changed too. Omar began funding centers for children with disabilities, not just for therapy, but for joy, music, movement, healing of the soul. He named the first one House of Mariam. When asked why, he replied, "Because she reminded me that broken things don't need to be fixed, just loved." One night, as the moon rose high, Yasmin held her father's hand and asked, "Do you think I'll always dance?" He smiled. "As long as you remember her songs, you will." From a distant window, Mariam's voice rose in the air. Soft, warm, eternal. And in that moment, under a canopy of stars, the family once shattered was whole again. Forever dancing. Some stories are told to entertain. Others are told to awaken something we forgot we carried inside. If this story touched your heart, it's not just because a little girl took her first steps. It's because something far greater happened. A man remembered how to feel. A child dared to hope again. And a woman, once unseen by the world, became the key that unlocked a healing no fortune could buy. Omar al-Masri had everything: status, power, global recognition. But it wasn't until he looked into the eyes of his daughter and saw her pain reflected back at him that he realized true wealth isn't found in bank accounts or glass towers. It's found in the quiet moments of courage, in the people who show up not to fix us, but to see us. Mariam didn't come with degrees. She came with presence, with love, and with the unshakable belief that the soul must be reached before the body can follow. Her song was not magic, it was memory, a memory of who we once were, before fear taught us to silence our joy. Let this story be more than just a tale you watched. Let it be a mirror. Who in your life has been sitting in silence, waiting for you to see them? What wounds are still open because no one ever sang to them? You don't need to be a healer to change a life. You just need to be present, to be honest, to be brave enough to love someone exactly as they are. So if this story moved you, take a moment right now to do 3 simple things. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss stories that remind you what truly matters. Like this video. If you believe in second chances, in quiet miracles, and in the kind of love that doesn't need to be loud to be life-changing. Share this story with someone who might be carrying pain in silence, someone who needs to hear that healing is possible. And remember this: sometimes the greatest riches we'll ever find come not from the world we build, but from the hearts we choose to hold. Thank you for watching. Stay kind, stay open, and never stop listening for the song that could change everything.